The market has recognized Midnight Sun recently,
Yes.
right? And I think 3 or 4x your market cap in the last 6 months.
Everything has changed. Everything that we were saying was coming a decade out is happening now. And when I say now, I mean like in 12 to 18 months. So all of those banks are changing their forecast. Everybody's saying the deficit is here. We need copper. There's no access. We need more supply. We're building AI data centers like crazy. Where is that copper going to come from? We're here to talk about the answer.
This is Jay Martin.
Adrian, it's so good to have you back in the studio, man. I feel like we got a ton to catch up on.
Oh, tons. It's always the best to be here. And yeah, it's been an incredible few months. So let's dig in.
Okay, so you guys have been crazy busy, been following the news flow, haven't had you in the studio for a few months. So there is lots to cover, but where I want to start, given sort of headline culture right now, every day we're being inundated by a trade war update, right? And headlines will sensationalize, politicians will politic, but trade of raw materials tells the truth.
Yeah.
And so maybe that's where we'll start. And what was really notable to me recently is that a lot of major banks around the world, including like Bank of America, Goldman Sachs, TD, and a handful of others, have adjusted their near-term copper forecast. And I don't mean like 2030, I mean next year, like 8 months down the road. Partially in response to Grasberg shutting down, the second biggest copper mine in the world in Indonesia.
There's two, really. I mean, I think there's two to follow, right?
Okay.
First of all, going back 2 years, the loss of Cobre Panama for First Quantum, okay? This was huge. This set the stage. That's 5% of the world's copper production, right?
Yeah.
So that set the stage for this deficit. And we've already been talking about the deficit. Those same banks you mentioned have been talking about the deficit. And there's this looming need for copper that the world has never seen before. We talked about this last time I was here. It's unprecedented on every level. So you have this shortage of supply. You have a complete lack of new deposits coming on stream. You have no new tier one discoveries in the last decade. And now you're in a position where that supply is tightening up. Everything happening in the world is making that supply deadline or deficit that's looming on the horizon even tighter. And all of a sudden, Grasberg goes offline. So now everything has changed. Everything that we were saying was coming a decade out is happening now. And when I say now, I mean like in 12 to 18 months. So all of those banks are changing their forecast. Everybody's saying the deficit is here. We need copper. There's no access. We need more supply. We're building AI data centers like crazy. Where is that copper going to come from? And, you know, we're here to talk about the answers.
It strikes me as almost similar. My audience will be familiar with like the valuation of the royalty business.
Yes.
Often you notice like a royalty company gets valued on today's cash flow despite what's in the pipeline.
Yeah.
And it drives the CEOs crazy because they're like, look what's in the 2-year forecast. We're not getting respected for that. But once it's 6 months away, then the market recognizes it. Yeah. And that's kind of what's happening in we've known about the deficit for a very long time. We've been talking about it for a very long time. Yeah. Now that it's on our doorstep, people will acknowledge that it really matters today. And my question for you is, you know, last time we were here, we said, we know about the deficit. We don't know what we're going to do about it. Right?
Sure. Yeah.
Are you seeing substantive action by politicians in the West to activate some solutions here? Because that's the reindustrialization plan, right? Yeah. We need some support.
For sure. So let's give it the most obvious example. And this is a backbone of all the presentations I'm making right now. And as you know, I mean, I'm on the road literally 24/7. Like right now, it's full on. This is the time we need to tell our story. We need the world to understand what's happening. Literally, we are at the heart of what's happening globally for copper. There couldn't be a more perfect example than the Libido corridor. So when you look at the entire Zambian Copperbelt or Zambian Congo Copperbelt, you look at what's happening in Angola, and you look at all those assets. A few years back, Joe Biden put $120 million up to build a rail line in concert with Trafigura. So the plan was, let's build this line that connects the north-south line that runs sort of northwest-southeast up through DRC. Let's connect to a western port so that we can get all that copper from First Quantum Sentinel mine, from Barrick's Lumwana mine, from Kansanshi, and maybe from Midnight Sun's property out to a western port so it can go to the US and it can go to Europe. So what we've seen is Joe Biden putting up $120 million. Trump has stepped up now and said, we're going to put up $360 million and let's build it now. So they're putting their foot down. They're saying, this is it. This is the spot where we see that copper deficit being solved, where we see new supply coming from. You have Barrick running a $2 billion expansion plan to double their output. Right. You have President Hichilema stepping up and saying, we know that Zambia can be this place. We know that we can help. So we're going to do everything we can to ramp up our output to make Zambia number 2 or 3 in the world. And this rail line is the proof in the pudding. This is the piece that links everything up, takes that material to a Western port, and from what I see, this can be the piece that solves that deficit, or at least plays a big part in that.
And so for context, the Lobito Corridor Rail, it starts effectively where you guys are in the Zambia Copperbelt.
Yes.
And you mentioned some of the heavyweight mining companies that are there today. It dips through the DRC, it goes through Angola, and then it arrives at the Atlantic Ocean. Right?
Close. So you basically have a rail line existing that runs from Ndola up into the DRC.
Okay.
Right? The Lobito Corridor comes from Ndola, which is about, I don't know, maybe a couple hundred kilometers southeast of us. And it runs directly from that point out through our Luswishi project, right through the center of our Solwezi project. So we actually have this in our decks. If you look at our deck, you can see the Lobito Corridor and the planned location. It literally comes from Ndola, runs right through Luswishi, right through Solwezi, right through Lumwana, and all the way out to that western port through Angola. This is mission critical, and this is the biggest stamp of approval we could have had.
So paint the picture. I know we've covered this before, but if anyone's not familiar, what's happening in Zambia and the surrounding area, why has there been such a concentration of almost all of the world's multinational mining companies in this region?
Yeah.
Walk me through the geology, the operating mines, Adrian, for anybody who's just looking at this region with fresh eyes and wondering why is Trump upping the ante like this?
Okay, so if you look at the entire Zambian Copperbelt, so I'll kind of try and create a visual for you, okay? You go up, you have the DRC just above us. So we're on the Zambian side. Now there's 2 things I always like to throw into this. Number 1, if you're in the DRC, you're going to take a steep discount because you're going to have to give up a huge chunk of your project for nationalization. You're also probably going to have to bring in some kind of heavyweight partner and give up a big percentage on that basis. So you can't own your project 100% and operate in the DRC. Where we are in Zambia, we own 100%. There's no royalties. There's no encumbrances. This is all us. Okay. So that really is a backbone reason as to why all these companies want to be in Zambia, why we want to be in Zambia. You don't pay a royalty until you're a producer. We'll never be a producer. Okay, M&A is the name of the game. So now, if you picture the DRC up here, you've got the Zambian Copperbelt on this side. Everything is the same. The geology is the same. The grades are a little higher up in the DRC, but you have Ivanhoe's Kamoa-Kakula up to the northwest. Okay, that's 1.4 billion at almost 3% copper. Okay. Follow down to the south, you have First Quantum Sentinel mine. That's 1 billion tons at 0.51. Go a little east of Sentinel, you have Barrick's Lumwana mine. Now, this is the mine that made Barrick change their name from Barrick Gold to Barrick Metals. Okay, this thing is huge, 1.62 billion tons at 0.52. And the last time we chatted, or maybe the time before, that was a 900 million ton deposit at 0.52. Yeah. The thing that changed that was our guy, Kevin Bonnell. Kevin led the team that unraveled that for Barrick, gave them a tier 1 asset, and now that thing is moving forward. They're on a massive expansion plan. So $2 billion expansion plan to tie all 3 of their deposits, which are one big system, but 3 separate deposits, tying those all together with one giant super pit. They're running something like 24 or 25 drill rigs or even 29 drill rigs right now on this massive expansion and exploration program. Then right next to Barrick's Lumwana mine, you have Midnight Sun. So we are literally right there. We have the exact same geology. We have the identical setting. These are basement domes, and we could dig in more to the geology side in a second, but same kind of basement dome hosted system. Okay. There's only 3 of those in the entire belt: Kamoa-Kakula, Lumwana, and Dumbwa. Dumbwa is our big flagship target. We're going to talk a lot about it, but moving from there to the east of us, just 6 kilometers, you have First Quantum's Kansanshi mine. That's 1 billion tons at 0.66. So the unifying theme between all of those deposits, there are 1 billion tons. Okay. This is the only place in the world that breeds billion-ton deposits as an average. And I beat the drum on this line all the time. It's so important for people to understand the context of what these deposits are and what differentiates them from every other area in the world. Okay. When you hear about Chile, when you hear about Argentina, when you hear about any of the South American major copper areas, Arizona even, these are porphyry deposits, okay? When you look at porphyry deposits, all the low-hanging fruit has been picked. All the easy, near-surface stuff has been found, okay? There may be a few out there, but they're few and far between, to say the least. Any of those areas, the very, very top of the range of size of deposits would be in that billion-ton range. And I mean, they're an absolute outlier. These are a rarity of the highest order. In this region that we're working, billion-ton deposits are the average. Okay, that's what they find. That's what this area breeds. But taking that a step further, not only are they billion-ton deposits, they're billion-ton deposits that aren't porphyry. They're not a kilometer or two deep. Okay, these are right at surface. These start at surface and run to a max depth of 200 or 300 meters. So what that means is they're all open pit, they're all easy, they're relatively high grade, and they're absolutely enormous. That's why the US is building this rail line. That's why everybody wants access to this ground. This is the only place that has deposits big enough, shallow enough, that can be put in production quickly enough and at a low enough cost in terms of capex that they can actually impact what's going on in the world in this copper deficit that we're talking about. It's really, really special. It's totally unique. We're super lucky. We're the only junior that's in this area. We made a bet 12 years ago, and we were right. We're the only junior in the heart of the belt with a big project that now has a discovery and marching forward.
Do you expect that to change? Just because whenever you see these situations unravel, and you guys have been at this for 12 years, now the spotlight's on you in a major way, right? And we'll talk about that. But inevitably, everybody's paying attention to what's occurring with Midnight Sun. Have there been any, copycat attempts? Anybody else moving into the area, looking at property? Are you seeing any activity like that?
There's a couple of companies that are working in the belt. They're way off to the west. Okay. So I'm going to name probably the two most prominent. Number one's a company called Ivanhoe that's moved in for 8,000 square kilometers of land. Them, You might have heard of those guys. The other one's Rio Tinto. So Rio Tinto's taken out 6,000 square kilometers of land right beside Ivanhoe, but they're way out to the west. And why are they way out to the west? They're way out to the west because there's no property available. So when you look at the belt, okay, going from Sentinel to Kansanshi, the only company in the middle of that has a key piece of ground that's really marching forward right in the heart of this thing is Midnight Sun. And the reason is it's an area dominated by majors. Midnight Sun probably should have never been there to begin with, but we were. We made it. We got in. We got a key piece of ground at a time when, copper was $1.50, $1.80.
Well, nobody cared when you guys got in there.
Not only did no one care, no one wanted to be there. Right. Everybody was kind of going, copper. Yeah. They weren't excited by it. Maybe it wasn't. It wasn't the flavor at the time.
100%.
But our team made a bet. They said, look, copper's going to be a thing. It's always going to be important. We need to be there. This is what you do. You get in when other people aren't paying attention. You get a key piece of ground. And we were really fortunate in that the piece of ground that we managed to acquire was actually First Quantum's property. This was part of their flagship package at Kansanshi. But when they were developing that, the government brought in something we refer to as the use it or lose it rule. And this isn't a negative thing. This is actually something we think is really great. In Zambia, the idea is if you have a big property package and you're not working on certain parts of it, you have to shed a certain percentage every time you renew. And the idea is to keep companies from hoarding real estate. So they keep the majors clean. They make sure they're focusing on what they're working on. And in the case of First Quantum, they were developing Kansanshi. That consisted of 5 licenses. There was 15 additional licenses that were exploration ground just sitting to the south of Kansanshi. And that is the property that we now own. So they had done a fair bit of work. Yeah. When we talk about the Dumbwa target, a lot of that information comes from First Quantum data. So, this was good ground. This was ground that should have been still owned by First Quantum.
But it's in the Zambian's government best interest to have somebody developing that. Exactly. And if a major is just sitting on it in perpetuity, they've got an incentive structure to get somebody else on that property.
That's right.
Doing some work. Yep. Okay. Enter Midnight Sun. So we talked about Barrick's Lumwana mine, 1.6 billion tons at this moment. Yeah. And how that's quite analogous to your Dumbwa project, which if anyone's been following the news, it's like you guys have been adding a new rig every month right now. So some pretty exciting results have come out of Dumbwa. Walk us through what's going on the ground and what you've learned thus far. Because last time we sat down, we kind of went through a list of like the next unanswered questions that we were going to get some clarity on with Dumbwa. We're part of the way there now.
Yeah, I think you have to look at this sort of from a fulsome perspective in terms of what is our plan of attack? So let's wind the clock back a tiny bit and enter Kevin Bonnell, okay? Kevin is so key to this, really. His work, what he did, how he did it, really important to what we're trying to accomplish. So we always saw Dumbwa as a very, very special target. We always knew it had the potential. We've got all of these impressive drill intercepts from First Quantum. We've got a 20-kilometer long soil anomaly that gets up to 0.73% copper in soil. We have the vegetation kill zone we talk about all the time, which is this barren area where no vegetation can grow because there's so much copper in soil coming from a large copper system below. You have everything telling you that there's something there. But what's the approach to take that from, this data-rich phase of knowing something's there, but how do you attack it, to actually unlocking what it is? So take the story over to Lumwana, right? Barrick buys Lumwana for $7.3 billion from Equinox, spends 20 years trying to unravel it, can't do it. They can't figure this thing out. It has a lack of continuity. They can't figure out how to get Chimiwungu, which is the initial deposit, working. And they finally bring in this guy 4 years ago named Kevin Bonnell, PhD geologist, completely specialized in this region. He spent most of his career here with Freeport-McMoRan, has more deposits to his credit than any other geologist in the belt. Kevin comes in, Barrick says, listen, we need a tier 1 deposit, which is 1 billion tons of ore. We need a tier 1 asset. We want to be Barrick Metals. We have a plan, but we need to figure this out. We need Lumwana to work. Kevin comes in with fresh eyes, has a very specific approach, which is actually quite simplistic, but brilliant in how methodical and how concise his execution is. Comes in, looks at the deposit, unravels it, figures out Chimiwungu. Turns out there's a north-south fault that nobody had realized. And he figures this out through a process called dipole IP, okay? Geophysical survey that unlocks the thing. He then goes out, finds 2 geochemical anomalies, finds Camaranda and Lubwe, 2 satellite deposits, strings the whole thing together, and in 24 months gives Barrick 1.62 billion tons of ore, gives them a massive amount of mine life, 62 years, and 9 million tons.
62 years.
62 years. 9 million tons of contained copper. And now they're doing a $2 billion expansion. They're going to build a super pit that comprises all of those things. They built a 20-kilometer long conveyor belt to move ore. This thing is going to be absolutely unreal. And Kevin turns his attention to this target to the east called Dumbwa. Kevin comes over with Barrick, ends up joining us. And I love to re-encapsulate this story because it's so critical to understanding what our approach is. He knows, based on what he found at Lumwana, that these basement dome hosted, they're different geology, right? These aren't the same as every other deposit in the belt. These are unique. Kamoa-Kakula, Lumwana, and Dumbwa are the 3 outliers. They're in the basement dome itself. They're bigger, they have more scale, they have better grade. These are the real thing. So Kevin realizes that Dumbwa looks just like Lumwana, and through a process with Barrick, he ends up leaving his job at Barrick and joining Midnight Sun to drive Dumbwa forward and do the exact same thing he did at Lumwana, now for us at Dumbwa. And that's exactly what we're doing. So we had the geochem anomaly. We ran the dipole IP, and you and I talked about this last time. That gave us 11.5 kilometers of mineralization. Okay. Now, that's the first half. We think the whole thing's 20 kilometers long. Everything we've seen at surface and historic drilling with First Quantum tells us that's the case. But the key is to go in methodically. So going back to what you were asking, where is it now? We've taken Kevin's same approach, and the approach is so simple. You go in and you don't drill anything you don't understand. Okay, that's been the mistake on so many of these targets, is that companies will come in, have what we have, which is a giant geochem anomaly that looks amazing, and start punching holes in it. But if you don't understand why that geochem anomaly is there and how it correlates to the mineralization at depth, then how do you know how to drill it, right? You need a roadmap. So that's what Kevin's done. He's created this model and this roadmap using the most methodical, concise approach you possibly can. Now we have it. Now we're drilling. Hole number 3, right on the money.
That's where the dipole comes in, right?
This is where it comes
between that unknown and let's drill here.
And it is.
Yeah, as mentioned, this is firing the charge down into the earth. You measure how long the rocks maintain that charge. That'll tell you a lot about the mineralization. And what you're learning thus far is you're averaging 0.73 copper in the soil?
So the peak grade. So when you look at the geochem anomaly, it's based on thousands of samples, okay? Stretched over a 20-kilometer area at surface.
Yeah.
That peak grade is 0.73, but the average grade is very high.
Yes.
So
and for context,
really
the mines we ran through thus far seem to range from like 0.3 something to about 0.52.
Yeah, 0.56 is the average in the whole belt. Okay, if you take Kamoa-Kakula, and that drags the average up because that's such a high grade deposit. But 0.56 across the whole belt. Okay. So when you look at what we're seeing at surface, that's a strong indication that there's something serious there. We also have 25 drill holes from First Quantum. 21 of those hit. Randomly, okay? Like they drilled wildcat across this anomaly and they still managed to hit on 21 of those holes. Not only did they hit, they got great intercepts, over 1% copper, big widths, kind of 10 to 20 meters thick, multiple layers of mineralization. But the most important piece of data there is that we know from their drilling that they hit at the south and they hit all the way to the north. So we know the sulfide system is there, okay? We can lean on that historic data and go, we have enough of a sense that this is real. We can see the geochem. We have these copper clearings extending over that area. So what we need to do is take all of that data and correlate it. And the missing piece is dipole IP. It gives you the depth. It gives you the dip direction. So that's the tilt of the mineralization in the ground. And it gives you those two key pieces of data so you can tie everything together. Then what you have to do is methodically drill, take the results of those early drill holes, and let it dictate how the model works. What is the IP high telling you? What's the resistivity telling you? What's the chargeability telling you? And how does that correlate with the geochem? Once you figure out all those correlations, you can create an absolutely crystal clear roadmap to drilling this thing top to bottom. And that's exactly what we're doing.
Let me ask you a question. How much of the motivation to drill without understanding the full picture, we see this so often in the junior sector, is driven by a company's impatience that we know if we announce a big drill program, we'll probably be rewarded, right? And so they do that prematurely, despite not putting their best foot forward. Like if you can be patient, do the boring stuff, the dipole, but understand what you're looking at, right? And then drill more intelligently, that's the better path. But, you know, is it just that it's probably that companies just get a bit impatient and shareholders are impatient and they want the big drill program to be announced and all of this? So do you think that's the key motivator there?
Absolutely. And you know what, man, I love that you asked that because here's the key. If you look at 9 out of 10 juniors, okay, maybe 8 out of 10, let's give more credit than that. But if you look at the way people approach drilling, okay, if you had a 20 kilometer long anomaly, you had areas where you had historic high grade hits and you had big surface anomaly numbers, you would typically go to the best part of that deposit and you'd pop a drill hole in. And if you hit, then that junior would likely go to the north end of the target and try and hit up there. Then they would likely try and go to the south end of that target and hit down there. And what I'm getting at is they look for the biggest arm wave they can make. Right? The quickest path to making a big arm wave and saying, look, we hit 4 times, okay? But they're 20 kilometers apart. So the system must be 20 kilometers apart. And therefore, here it is. So that can work well with your retail scene. People
just
get excited about that. That's totally. Massive step outs, big arm wave. And more times than not, that lets people down. It gives people a false sense of what it is. If they don't understand the model and then they miss on a couple of holes, people give up. It creates volatility in the stock. It puts everybody on a roller coaster, right? We don't want to put anybody on a roller coaster. We have a totally different approach. And we made this decision early on in the process. And we made this decision because Kevin led the way, okay? 2 guys in the field that are really leading the charge, Kevin Bonnell and a new geologist we brought in named Adrian O'Brien. Adrian O'Brien came to us from Lumina. He worked with Ross Beatty and Leo Hathaway for the last 14 years. And he's responsible for this big Polish Kupferschiefer deposit that they just discovered. It's been all over the news, big thing. They say it's going to be one of the 5 biggest in the world. Those 2 guys are leading the way, and their approach was totally different. Kevin and our team sat down, and we laid out the plan. And what we decided was, let's absolutely not do what a typical junior would do. Let's not go out and drill big step outs just to arm wave and be splashy and create, you know, exciting highs and the roller coaster that people are used to being on. Let's drill this methodically. Let's start at the southern end of the target, right at the southern end of our property, and let's march this along line by line. Okay, so if you think about those IP lines, they're spaced out 500 meters apart. Okay, so you naturally have a grid of 500 meter spacing over 24 lines of IP from south to north. So let's actually go in, let's start in the center, and each line 1, line 2, line 3, line 4, marching our way up completely methodically. Let's drill 100 meter step outs east to west. Let's find the constraints for each line. on the western extent of the system. Let's see what we hit, and let's build the model absolutely methodically and drill this the same way a major would. It's very rarely done in our business. It's not the way people typically approach this, but our goal here is not to be promotional and arm wavy. We do lots of marketing. I'm not shy about telling our story. I love doing all of this stuff. I love the interviews with you. This is where we tell the story. But in terms of our geological approach, it couldn't be more methodical. It couldn't be more thoughtful. And what we're doing is drilling just like a major would, so that we can create a bulletproof model that when we sit down and the day comes, we can lay this out for any group thinking about M&A. And we have a completely defensible, completely bulletproof model that no one can poke holes in. We've done it the right way. No one's going to say, well, you left this 5-kilometer gap over here.
Right.
No, we didn't.
Right.
We drilled 100-meter spacing over these lines all the way from south to north. And we're showing you if we're at 6 kilometers or 9 kilometers or 8 kilometers or whatever it may be, we know what we have and we can show the world how big it is, each block, each step of the way. And that's why we're doing it the way we are.
Well, that's the benefit, I think, of being very clear on what the end zone is, right? You know exactly what your goal is, right? Totally. You said it in this interview and in many before, we are explorers, right? We're not mine builders.
No.
The mine builder's next door,
absolutely,
right? But they're watching what we're doing. Yeah. So you're exploring the way they would.
Exactly.
So when they look at your process, it's very easy to understand.
Exactly.
And you can get ahead of any concerns that may come up. That's clear.
Yeah.
Okay.
So how do you get those teams up the curve when the time comes? Create a data set for them that's totally defensible, that they can look at and go, how do we argue with this? We would have done this the same way. You guys did it from day one. You're giving them a crystal clear picture of what you have and how big it might be, so that we can aim towards M&A. That's our goal. Yeah. We want to be bought. We want to create the ultimate target for M&A. Yeah. We know that we're in the pole position in Zambia. We have the project that is now marching forward. We have, we have the discovery, if you will. Yeah. What I always refer to it as is now, this is the confirmation of everything we've been saying about Dumbwa. Now we have it. Now we just have to go and systematically prove it out.
Now you have to prove it out. And let me ask, as much as you can share on that sort of M&A strategy, is it let's keep our heads down, stay at work, and the call will come, right? Or is there something over and above that you're doing or can do? Are you actively courting suitors, being more proactive about that? Or is it like, no, we just keep our heads down and produce, and that phone call is going to happen when it happens?
Look, I think it's a combination of the two. Yeah. Without saying things that we can't say, I think the reality is we have to be proactive in terms of engagement. We have to have any conversations that need to happen early on. We need to have people seeing the data in real time. And we need to make sure that everybody knows where we are and knows where we're going. And whether that's just, informal calls or properly arranged situations under NDA, we have to keep that process going in concert with our geological approach. And at the end of the day, we know that we're methodically proving it out. We know the people that need to be watching are watching. That day will come if we're successful.
Well, it's the next logical step in the copper story, right? Like, we've been aware of the deficit approaching for many, many years. Yeah. Majors obviously picked up on that. And a couple of years ago, we begun to see mergers, right? Yeah. Not buying future production, just trying to buy existing production to make their castle stronger. But the next step that has to happen is that they need to buy future production. They need to buy new production, right? Yeah. And that's when that day comes. I think that day's here, actually, but it's your job to be the prettiest girl to dance, right? To make sure when they're looking at the landscape and they're like, what are our options here? Because clearly we need to solve this problem. And, so, okay, I understand that. So, anything else you want to share on Dumbwa? Because I know you've been adding rigs like crazy and you plan to add more, right? And so this right now, and there's more going on in Midnight Sun I'll get into, but is it fair to say that like Dumbwa is the core focus right now? Yeah. 100%.
Dumbwa's the flagship, okay?
It's
like,
the flagship,
we don't like to dance around it too much. We want to be really direct. Dumbwa is the big prize. Dumbwa's the flagship.
I keep on saying it wrong. I keep on saying Dumbwa. And then
you know what? I got corrected. Okay. It's Dumbwa. So to put it out there, it's Dumbwa. And I changed my pronunciation of it because that was it. You got to say it right. We can't be out there saying it wrong. So it's Dumbwa. But when you think about what we're trying to accomplish at Dumbwa, we need to be clear, right? We need to make sure that we tell everybody what our plan is, that we're moving forward the right way, and that people understand what we're going to talk about in a moment at Kazhiba is exciting. But what we're doing at Dumbwa is the kind of thing that people like myself look for their our entire career. Okay, this is a remarkable opportunity. These don't come along very often. And going back to something I alluded to early in this discussion was the idea around tier 1 deposits. Okay, so tier 1 deposits, these are things that are over 1 billion tons. That's typically what the Domes region in Zambia produces. Dumbwa, just from the perspective of scale, okay, just the surface anomaly alone is significantly larger than the surface anomaly they had at Lumwana. That surface anomaly became a 1.62 billion ton deposit. What we're working on, and what we've now confirmed in drilling, is a copper system. We know that we have a surface extent in geochem that is 20 kilometers long. That's multiples bigger than what they had at Lumwana. So when you think about the scale, you think about how special it is, and you think about the rarity of tier 1s. There hasn't been a new tier 1 in 10 years. Okay. This is what the world needs. Somebody needs to bring a new tier 1 online. And if you think about what we're trying to do, you think about the timing, you think about all the themes we've just talked about, the copper deficit, what's going on. It's about delivering a brand new system that's in that range to the market at a time when the world needs it more than it ever has.
Okay.
So what we're doing is we're trying to fast track Dumbwa.
Okay.
The whole key in Zambia is that it's hard to get drill rigs. Okay. You've got Barrick running 29 drill rigs next door, and you have majors running drill rigs all over the place. So it's hard to get drill rigs. As many as we can get, we're going to put on the ground. And the whole key here, Jay, is this is about execution. This is about complete and total conviction. It's putting your money where your mouth is, and it's putting enough drill rigs on the ground to get this job done in 6 months, 12 months, not 5 years. Okay. I think one of the things, and you and I have talked about this just off camera tons of times, one of the things that hurts people in our business a ton, that hurts companies and hurts good projects, is the speed at which we execute in this business. People come in, generalist investors come in, and they look at this and go, I like it, but it's 5 years to become what you think it will, or 10 years, or 7 years, or whatever it may be. If we can shorten that up, and our industry at large can raise enough money to speed these projects up, stop the process of raising $1 million, poking a few holes, sitting around for 6 months, raising another $500,000, poking a couple of holes, and instead attack a project like this with complete conviction, put enough money in the bank, which we just raised $30 million. We have $40 million in the bank. Have enough money to take it to the finish line, and then do it in as quick a fashion as you possibly can. That's the recipe for success.
Yeah, but because you measured twice before you cut.
You got it.
It's like rushing in is a fool's game most of the time, right? You guys have been patient for many years, and now it's time. And, gratefully the stars have aligned from a geopolitical and macro standpoint. You guys have the cash, you have the intelligence to now be aggressive. And now get after it, right? And, because this is the moment where you don't want anything to slow you down, having to go back to the market for capital, got a problem, having to backtrack and do some earlier exploration activities. That's been done. So now you can sprint.
Now we can sprint. But now we can run to the finish line. And the whole goal is exactly sprint, get there as quick as we can. So we're absolutely, pedal to the floor. Let's get to the finish line. Let's drill it off. Let's show everybody what this is. So effectively right now we're drilling lines 1 to line 6 by Christmas. We're going to create a 3D model that we can deliver to the market in December and show the world what Dumbwa actually looks like. We have had a lot of surprises. The first 20 to 30 drill holes, really, I always tell people, it's not to go in with an expectation that, bang, we hit on hole number 2. Now it's going to be easy peasy. We're just going to go out. We know exactly what it is. Absolutely not. That first 20 to 30 drill holes is where you perfect your model. Okay. You have an idea. You have a plan, you have a roadmap, but that roadmap is going to get twisted and turned and switched and turned on its head 2 or 3 times before it's completely locked in. But by Christmas, we'll be completely locked in. And at this point, we know the system, we've got our plan, we've got our model works. We've got some fantastic drill intercepts right out of the gate. And let's put some context on that really quick too, because people talk about Dumbwa, they talk about the systems in the region. I've seen multiple different situations where people are talking about different systems, different deposits, and trying to wrap their head around what these are. When you're looking at something like Lumwana, okay, 1.62 billion ton deposit, the average drill intercept started anywhere from surface to 100 or 200 meters at depth, okay, and it was 10 to 20 meters thick, okay. These aren't porphyries. You're not going to see 100 or 200 meters of 0.5%. That's 2 kilometers underground. You're going to see 10 to 20 meter thick intercepts of anywhere from 0.3 to 0.6. And enough of those over enough strike length is going to build a massive system. And the goal is to build it close to surface on strike. There's a couple of things that surprised us at Dumbwa. Number one was just the mineralization that we got in those first couple of holes was very close to surface. It actually started at 6 meters. So we're talking almost right at surface with a deeper intercept than we expected. We got down to stuff that was 190 meters depth.
Okay.
So when you think about what this looks like, we're now developing the model and perfecting it so that by the time we hit our stride, November, December here, we're on it, we know what to do, and we can just systematically build it out.
Okay. So stay tuned for news flow on Dumbwa.
Yeah.
And
perfect pronunciation.
See, I learned.
Not bad.
I can learn things still. So let's pivot to like the next property in the hierarchy, I guess, which is Kazhiba. And I like how there's like relationships with your properties. You know, Dumbwa, you think of Lumwana. Kazhiba, you think of Kansanshi, right?
Sure.
And that's because the last time you and I sat down, we discussed this sort of unique oxide deal that you were circling with First Quantum. They have a smelter. It needs oxides. That's what you have, right?
Yeah.
And that's maybe a future path for that property. So catch anybody up who's not familiar with that conversation and what we need to know about Kazhiba today.
Yeah. So Kazhiba, to kind of give you the backstory on it, talk about a unique situation. This is something where what you often see with these large strata-bound systems, which are what are in the outer part. So we talked about basement domes and then the fact that those are unique deposits, right? Lumwana, Kamoa-Kakula, Dumbwa. Most, or 80, let's call it 85% of the copper deposits in this belt are in the ring of rock that surrounds those basement domes, and they're strata-bound. Lumwana, Dumbwa, and Kamoa-Kakula are basement dome hosted, okay? They're completely different. So for anybody watching this that's actually trying to compare them, they're totally different, okay? You can't look at them the same way. They're hosted in different rock. They're formed a completely different way. One relies on chemistry. One relied on a pathway within a granite. These are the basement dome systems. But what we're looking at in these lower Rhone hosted systems is typically near surface mineralization that's stratabound. Okay. So it's in sediments. It's in, we call it the lower Rhone. Okay. That's the ring of rock around the edge. When you're looking at those, you'll very often find oxide copper. So this is copper that's part of a sulfide system that's been weathered over time, changes the makeup of that rock. It becomes oxidized and it becomes oxide copper, typically hosted in malachite. Okay. And when you're out trying to look for one of these big sulfide systems, one of the first things that's a pathfinder in your drilling is often oxide. You hit oxide at surface, it's the top of a system, and you would then surmise that a sulfide deposit is underneath. Okay? That's what we did. We went up to Kazhiba. Over the last 12 years, we did drilling, we did sampling, we found this area, looked amazing, popped a couple of drill holes, hit some wild intercepts, really high grade, and then looked for the sulfide system underneath. There wasn't one. We hit barren dolomites. There was nothing there. And we were completely baffled. We're going, how can this be? How can you have incredible drill intercepts of malachite, of high-grade oxide, which should be the top of a sulfide system, and there's nothing underneath? So, you know, kind of hard to get our head around. As time goes on, we start to realize that what Kazhiba is something completely different. It's actually unprecedented in the belt. It's a high grade, probably mobilized. So meaning that something moved it, whether it was drainage, whether it was, you know, whatever, some kind of geological event. It's a pocket, a high grade deposit of malachite that's highly variable. So if you can picture a 30 meter thick layer of soil, okay, soil starting at surface, going down to 30 meters. Underneath that, there's a floor. Let's call it just like this. This is dolomite. And from here to 30 meters, you have fist-sized chunks of malachite suspended in soil, okay? So you could drill a hole and hit 20 meters of 10% copper and drill a hole 30 meters away and hit 20 meters of 0.5. That's the way this thing breaks out. And so in terms of getting our head around it, we had to figure out what that was. Now, that's the geological side. Secondarily, we're right beside First Quantum. They have an SXEW circuit. They need new feed. So there's a marriage made in heaven in that situation. The other option we have is to look at actually processing that material ourselves. That's a possibility. So we said, look, let's work together. We had a great relationship with those guys. Let's work together under just a loose technical alliance. Nothing binding, Nothing locked in stone. We own our asset. We own Kazhiba. We own everything there. But if you guys can help us, you help us with metallurgy, you understand the engineering, you know how we would need to drill this for you to be able to say, we can make use of that.
Yes.
So help us with that process so that we can expedite the whole thing. And that's what we did. So that's the cooperative exploration plan. It's completely loose, it's completely non-binding, but really what it is just a technical alliance that allows their team to help our team and speed up our process. So we went out and did the drilling. We drilled in November 2024, and the results were off the charts. 21 meters, 26 meters of like 5.5%, 10.5%, super high grade, highly variable. We drilled 58 holes, and that gave us the basis for an initial resource. So then we went in and looked at it and said, I think we've only drilled a small portion of the footprint of that Kazhiba mineralization, this high-grade oxide deposit. So we just finished drilling 160 holes, and we ran something called a partial ionic leach survey. So the partial ionic leach survey gave us 3 brand new targets to the southeast, and those 160 holes that we just completed are now going to give us the basis for our very first 43-101 compliant mineral resource estimate. That'll come out
very soon.
Very soon. And this is going to be the backstop for what that's worth. Like for the very first time, people can look at Midnight Sun and have a tangible asset that they can wrap their arms around and say, Kazhiba main, which is what we call that first 300 by 300 meter footprint.
Yep.
That'll give us a real tangible number that people can put their arms around, give a value to, and start to think about what kind of dollar value there is to that once we extract it, whether we do a deal with First Quantum, whether we extract it on our own. This is the positioning now to be able to give us a re-rate, to backstop our market cap and our valuation with something tangible in concert with those big exploration assets.
I feel like that's really important because, you know, we were chatting before we hit record here about your market cap. The market has recognized Midnight Sun recently, right? And I think 3 or 4x your market cap in the last 6 months, something like this.
Yeah, I'd say that's fair. I mean, really, if you look at the start of this process, when we put the strategy in place and unleashed it, we were something like a 22-cent stock. So $25 million market cap.
Right.
We hit a peak this year of $360 million.
There it is.
So it's settled down a little bit. You know, we've just completed this financing, so we're kind of in a hold mode right now. That's a big lift. You know,
it's a big lift, and it adds a bit of pressure, right? Because now you gotta deliver on that. And so that's where my questioning comes from. It's like, what are the opportunities near term at Dumbwa or at Kazhiba, right? That'll affirm that valuation and cement it, right? We deserve this.
Yes.
And obviously a resource estimate is like a key piece of that.
That's it. That's the backstop. Yeah. So when I look at it, I go through the same process you just laid out. It's at one point, I mean, there's one day of trading where we were up 45 cents, went to $2, amazing lift. But when you think about our valuation today, we raised our money. So we just locked in $30 million. We talked about that a few minutes ago. We did that at $1.35. Our last financing was at 22 cents.
Yeah, people are happy.
It's a 7 times lift. Yeah. I mean, how could anybody possibly have an issue with us doing a large financing, give us enough money to get to the finish line, which is so critical in this business, and with such an aggressive approach, while simultaneously unlocking something that gives us a real tangible valuation, backstop to our market cap, and finally, people can say, I get why they're worth $250 million, and maybe from here there's a re-rate and the chance to go higher based on whatever that turns out to be. We do know it's going to be very high grade. We're confident in saying that based on our drill results we've already released. But we don't know what that tonnage is going to come out at. We think we have something really special. And when you think about those eastern targets, they have the same signature. They look exactly the same. Now we need to go and drill those. And if those are real, there's your upside. There's your expansion potential.
There's some optionality.
And we can create something really special here.
I'd like to cover those, and maybe quickly, because I do feel like it's very important if you're looking at a story like Midnight Sun to understand exactly what the catalysts are.
Yes.
Right. And I think we've covered that in depth at Dumbwa and Kazhiba. And so people know exactly what to look forward to.
For sure.
Right. And when, right? We're going to be producing drill results at Dumbwa, through sort of Q2, maybe. Yeah.
Yeah. I'd say right now, I mean, I think coming into the end of the year, the whole story is drill results.
Yeah. It's going to be continuous.
Just drill results. All that drilling at Dumbwa on an ongoing basis. And we just cut a deal with SGS Labs to give us very quick turnaround on assays. 2 to 3 week turnaround. Whether you knew or not, ALS Chemex has about a 4 to 5 month global turnaround time.
Yeah. And it was slow.
Painful. Super painful. So we've got a deal now with a lab that's located an hour away from our project. So we're going to have fast turnaround on assays. That's kind of the cadence we're expecting. And, coming in the next few weeks, we're going to have those results start to flow. That'll put us in a position to have a really good cadence, keep delivering, results, execution to the market, and simultaneously, 43-101 resource at Kazhiba, plan as to what we're going to do with that. And moving into the new year, of course, starting to build out at Dumbwa and showing the world how big it is. It's pretty exciting. I mean, I would say this is, if you're looking for catalyst-rich environment in terms of the story and what we're executing on, I mean, this is just one catalyst after another. And that's going to keep going all the way through next year.
I love it, Adrian.
Yeah.
Oh, man. Okay, so anything else you want to cover in the periphery right now within the company? I know you've had some periphery activity like Luswishi, newish asset for you guys.
Sure.
We talked about that last time.
I mean, we can touch on it again just to kind of refresh, or for anybody that hasn't seen this before. So Luswishi is a fair distance east of our Sulawesi project. Luswishi covers something called the Luswishi Dome. So again, going back to the domes, they'll just kind of tie the geology in really quick to why we took on Luswishi, okay?
Yeah.
So you've got these basement domes. They're a granite formation that dictates where the deposits form, okay? The deposits form around those granites, except in the case of Dumbwa, Lumwana, and Kamoa-Kakula. When you look at the area, anywhere that you have a dome, you typically end up with deposits. So those are the big areas. Sentinel, it's on a dome. Lumwana is on a dome. Kamoa is on a dome, right? All of our projects at Sulawesi are on a dome. Kansanshi is on a dome. We have 3 domes under our property, and out to the east, we have this thing called Luswishi, which is yet another dome, has all kinds of historical data, has drill data, has geophysics, has sampling, all indicating there's something there. But it's the only one that does not yet have a deposit, that does not yet have enough work to prove it up, and it's the last dome in the area that wasn't tied up. We had an opportunity to grab it, we grabbed it, and to be perfectly clear, we're not planning on rushing out and doing any work at Luswishi. Okay. This is laser focus on Dumbwa and Kazhiba right now. We've even taken Me2 and Crunch and put them on the shelf for the next 6 months to a year, right? Like, stay focused. Yeah. But what Luswishi represents is dominance in the region. If you want a project that can move forward, if you want a new domes level project, the only company that has those tied up is Midnight Sun.
Yeah.
So when it comes to M&A, there's no other show in town. And it was very important for us to ring fence that and say, no, like, this is, if Luswishi's out there and it's available, we're going to take that on. We're going to tie it up. It's all part of the same package. Midnight Sun has the primary ground. We're the only guys entering that development pipeline, and we need to keep it that way. So that's what it's all about.
Okay. I love hearing when you say, we're putting Me2 and Crunch, 2 other targets that you guys have.
Great target.
In the portfolio, but they're on the shelf for now because we need to stay laser focused. You can only do so many things at once.
Totally.
You can only be good at so many things at once. It's super important to recognize. And I think we'll wrap it here. And I love that there's so many near-term events to look forward to, right? Yeah. It's not a waiting game now. As you mentioned, the waiting happened. The patient part, right? You did
12
that,
years.
Right?
I mean, people have definitely waited. We've had some really patient shareholders, but
now you got the cash to sprint. You got the information to sprint. Yeah. And, you have the market factors behind you right now.
Absolutely.
Both macro supply and demand, and obviously geopolitically right now. It's like
everything, all the winds in our sails.
Yeah.
Like, this is it.
Okay, man. Sure. The iron's hot.
Iron is hot.
I love it. Adrian, it's great catching up with you, brother.
Always the best.
All right.
Thanks, Jay.